All right, so to recap, Mark Carney becomes Canada's 25th Prime Minister, and the first thing that everybody's talking about is when he's calling for when is he going to call for this inevitable election, right? Carney, obviously the big-brained central banker who moves seamlessly now between the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, steps into this role without even holding a seat in Parliament and never holding a political office ever. The guy leading Canada doesn't even technically represent any specific riding yet. It's like putting the smartest finance professor in charge of your entire school without him having to teach a single class. Weird flex. And in Canada, it's definitely not unheard of. So that's another story. But, anyways, Carney is obviously going to be under serious pressure here. Parliament's supposed to reconvene on March 24th. That's a problem because the second he walks back into Parliament, the Conservatives, led by Pierre Poilievre, who seems genetically engineered to make every Liberal nervous and everybody left of center cringe. Yeah, he's got about 10 days to avoid getting his government torpedoed the second that Parliament resumes, which means he pretty much has no choice but to call an election as soon as humanly possible to try to get ahead of the train. And so on top of that, recent polls suggest that the Conservatives, their advantage is definitely shrinking, and it has been since Trump has taken office and since Trump was elected, and the whole an insane amount since Trudeau resigned. And on Carney wants to strike now while he still can on the honeymoon phase and cash in on that shiny new guy outsider appeal. Canadians traditionally give new leaders a brief honeymoon phase, and Carney knows that is the window of opportunity, and it's a slim one, right? But can backfire, obviously, like you're putting your entire government on the line. But those are just the vibes. And speaking of vibes, Carney's appointments in some instances, his appointment as a whole, it feels pretty bizarre, even just for Canadian politics. He doesn't exactly scream a traditional Canadian politician, a traditional Canadian prime minister, given that he spent the most past decade mostly talking inflation, interest rates, and vague platitudes at Davos forums. He's an economic heavyweight, obviously, and the thing about it, though, is that he doesn't really have the kind of political street smarts that you'd expect from a seasoned campaigner. He's never knocked on the doors or argued about healthcare policy with the media, and or even he seems prickly with the media, as CBC pointed out in their coverage. Those are the things that make his political legitimacy a bit of an open question. And without a seat in the House of Commons, Carney really can't engage directly in parliamentary debate. And it's running the country by delegation and PowerPoint. And it's fitting maybe for a former central banker, but politically it's pretty weird. I feel like, and the thing is that he doesn't even have a deputy prime minister. So who's going to represent the party in Parliament when it reconvenes? As far as what's on the ballot, though, Canada faces all the usual stuff, right? Economy, inflation, the ongoing Trump tariff dispute with the US, the bread and butter issues that voters actually care about. Canadians are feeling financially squeezed. Inflation is still stubbornly high, and the US keeps throwing trade tantrums, right? And add the climate crisis into the mix, and it's the various climate policy, whether you're for or against it. So Carney does have a very tough election ahead, and I feel like that it's going to be a tough hill to climb. So what's going to happen? I feel like it's a toss-up. Carney could ride with this like smart economist branding to a liberal mandate, whether it's a minority, which is probably more likely than a majority, or Poilievre might be able to capitalize on voter frustration for over a decade of the Liberal Party and get the Conservative win. Or what I think is the most Canadian scenario, and I've been talking about it for years now, is that one way or another we see another minority government, and then we get stuck watching the Ottawa parties awkwardly dance back and forth amongst each other over the next 2 years, potentially like the Conservatives winning a minority but not being able to form government. So Carney ends up remaining prime minister, or even just the Liberals winning a straight up minority. I could see that happening. But either way, Canada's heading into this weird, uncertain election season with a prime minister who's never run in a federal election, never run an election ever. So it's very much a ticking political clock. We got an opposition party that's sharpening its knives, at least on the right side. We have a social democratic left party that's increasingly irrelevant. And then we have the Bloc Québécois, who I'll talk about in a little bit more, who you might be able to see a little bit of movement there from the Bloc if they manage to win Quebec, which would have a large implication if it did that. But anyways, it is all classic Canadian politics, very chaotic, unpredictable, deeply polite. So, yeah, we'll see. But yeah, Mark Carney is stepping into this role as the prime minister in the middle of a pure political storm. And the real question isn't just whether he can win an election, it's whether he can stay in power, even if he loses, because thanks to the beautiful parliamentary system in Canada, seat counts don't always decide who governs. The Conservatives, under Pierre Poilievre, if they win most seats but fall short of a majority, Carney could easily still find a way to hang onto power. And Carney's whole appeal is that he's the economic guy. He ran both the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England. So if you're the kind of voter who thinks the economy should be left in the hands of very serious people, but the type of people who say things like fiscal responsibility, he's your guy. And his pitch is going to be that Canada is facing a chaotic economic moment never seen before. Trump is slapping tariffs on Canadians' goods left and right. Inflation is massively high. The economy is in a weird post-pandemic limbo. And the only person with the proper experience that can keep things steady is the guy who has the experience rather than to this career politician. And that's the foundation of his campaign. And the Liberals are very much betting that it's enough to convince people that, yeah, they might be sick of the Trudeau era, but Carney is different. And he's different enough to deserve a shot. And again, that's not something that I'm selling. It's just that's what they're selling. Right now, the polls suggest that Poilievre's Conservatives do have a real shot at winning most seats, but because Canada's political landscape is fragmented, the Liberals, NDP, Bloc Québécois, and the Greens all pulling votes in different directions, the odds of the Conservatives winning a majority now are not great. So that means that Pierre Poilievre, if he wins a polarity but can't lock down enough seats to win a majority, 170 plus for a majority, he's going to need help from another party to form government. And that will not happen. There's no party that's willing to work with him. The Bloc might, but it just simply won't happen because of Blanchet and Pierre Poilievre's differences. And it just won't work. And the Bloc would be able to get way more in a coalition with the center left than they would be able to with the Conservatives, because the Conservatives would just simply not be willing to give the Bloc what they want. So yeah, that's something that I've been cooking up for a while. Is the Conservatives, they win a polarity but don't have a majority. They would have to get other parties to back them in Parliament. The Bloc Québécois and the NDP are the obvious options, but they don't exactly vibe with the Conservatives. So the NDP would rather filibuster the Parliament and not have a prime minister than work with them. The Bloc might be able to because they're just pragmatic, but that's the thing. If Poilievre can't secure enough allies to win a confidence vote, then thanks to the parliamentary convention, thanks to the Westminster system, the Governor General could invite Carney to try to form government instead. And this happened. It happened in 1925. Liberal Prime Minister William Lyon Mackenzie King lost the election, but stayed in power with Progressive Party support. Recently, in 2008, opposition parties attempted to form a coalition to oust Stephen Harper's Conservative government. The system allows for this kind of maneuvering. And that's the thing, that's Carney's whole deal, is being a pragmatic technocrat who will work with other parties and position him in a way that will be able to make it happen. And that's one of the things that Mark Carney needs to do, is sell himself to the people and to other parties on the center left to be safe and stabilizing, and to be that option that those parties and their supporters have been looking for. If he can convince the NDP, or even convince the NDP in the bloc that working with him is obviously preferable to working with Poilievre, that he could hold on to power even if the Liberals don't win outright. And his entire strategy is going to revolve around posturing himself as this steady alternative to that conservative hyper volatility. And if he can pull that off, he might be the rare politician who stays in power even if he loses an election. So look out for that to happen. And if that does happen, people are going to be very upset. But yeah,